now this next question, watching the clock carefully here, will probably be the last one. And we're running kind of close. I was going to do this in 90 seconds, and I'll leave it, so you can advance that to 90 seconds. And this one will start off with Tish. I'll start to read here. According to Wikipedia, economic development is the sustained, concerted action of policymakers within communities that promote the economic health and the business environment of a specific area. How should the City of Elgin be involved in economic development? How should the Chamber of Commerce be involved in economic development? Can you cite any project or initiative that, if completed, would improve Elgin's economic and/or business environment? And I'll happily repeat that if you would like. Okay, I will repeat that. How should the City of Elgin be involved in economic development? How should the Chamber of Commerce be involved in economic development? Can you cite any project or initiative that, if completed, would improve Elgin's economic and/or business environment? Got that all down, Tish?
Yes, Chuck.
Well, you have it easy. The first person to answer, you don't have to worry about tripping over someone else's answers. You've got a clean slate.
Okay. How should we be involved in economic development as a city, the chamber, and specific projects? The partnership that we currently have with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Economic Development Group, I think is a good partnership, because the Economic Development Group, we are able to leverage several business owners in our community, presidents, CEOs that have great business experience, and we use them to help recruit other businesses to our community. They are called ambassadors, and they do a great job helping us to recruit new businesses coming into town. They also help us with our retention efforts in terms of getting businesses to stay here. Elgin, as a community, has to drive that process. As I mentioned earlier, we are competing with other communities on a daily basis, whether it be Aurora, Naperville, or even smaller communities up and down the Fox Valley, for new businesses, whether they be large or small. And we need to put ourselves in a position where we are going to be successful in getting businesses and jobs back to our community. Specific projects, I think two come to mind. The one that I'm very excited about that we just approved and will be moving forward with is the renovation of the Elgin Tower building downtown. The City of Elgin's iconic structure that right now is sitting vacant. We're excited that that is going to be renovated into market rate apartments. And the second project that I'll mention is hundreds of thousands of square feet of spec building space that is being built and has been built here. Thank you.
Economic development in Elgin has been lagging for years behind our neighbors, particularly along the Randall Road corridor to the north and to the south. I think part of the problem is that those communities for a long time, particularly in the late 90s and in the early 2000s before the wonderful recession, were more willing to step forward and offer incentives for retail tax revenue generating businesses. And for a long time, people commented that you would drive north from Crystal Lake, south to Aurora, and there's this huge void called Elgin. And only now we're seeing some spaces being filled to help counter that impression and I think reality. We need our own economic director. I don't think that the chamber should be totally forsaken here, because I do think they do bring some benefit. But I do believe that Elgin needs to drive our future with our own economic director, someone that has the expertise and has the drive and has the aggressive nature to offer incentives. Just recently, the old Walmart at Royal, a business approached and wanted to bring in a farm and fleet type business. However, City Hall decided that incentives weren't doable for them, and so we lost that revenue. That needs to stop.
I will answer in two parts. Number one, the partnership between the chamber and the city. Economic development is very competitive among the cities. There are 15,000 different chambers of commerce across the country which are competing for the same businesses. If you have a business, a viable business in Elgin, you will get a letter from the governor of Texas. Why don't you move here? We'll give you all these incentives. So it is pretty hard for any city to retain those businesses or to bring new businesses. And if I'm a new business coming to town, I will not go to the city and talk to them because I would like to keep that information very confidential. So I will approach it through an intermediary like chamber to talk to the city and so that my information is confidential. Based on that, a partnership is needed between the city and the chamber. That's number one. Number two is the tower renovation. I don't think it's an economic development at all. City has given $4.7 million for 45 apartments. That means $110,000 per apartment in downtown, which does not have a parking spaces next to it. So why, when in Elgin, when we can get a single-family home for $110,000, why would anybody spend $110,000 for one apartment?
I think the city's role in economic development as a facilitator and a promoter of business, and it has to be very narrowly defined. We have to promote what our benefits are to companies, ECC, our education, the river, close proximity to the city, metro station, and close proximity to 90, all of the things that are advantages of opening a business in Elgin. Overall, I think you have to have a low taxation environment with low regulations, streamlined business processes so that businesses can open. I would like to see more people in our diverse community opening their own businesses, taking a risk of opening businesses in Elgin. And in order to do that, we have to help them understand the processes, get them through those processes quickly and effectively so they can take a chance about opening a business in Elgin. It's not just about bringing business in from the outside, but it's helping our own citizens, encouraging our own citizens to take a risk of opening their own business in Elgin. I'd like to see more of that.
Julie, I agree on this one. I think the current use that city has, which is no checks written out, but we'll waive fees, we'll share sales taxes, and this was driven by somebody coming in the audience too at the time. I mean, we get credit for this too. This has worked, and it's working so far. We have businesses coming and looking at our town all the time. We get reports from staff, and it's showing that it's still working. This is a place people want to move. Home building, we've been the highest number of homes started last couple of years, and that everybody thinks that's out west, but think about it. We have a home going in on New Park Boulevard. We have a home going in Esmeralda Park right across from DC Cook. These are infill homes. This is a big sign that people have faith in this community and are believing in us and want to invest here, the builders and the buyers. So that's a huge sign. Education, I don't want to steal the mayor's thunder because this is his thing, but we have some initiatives. That's a big concern. That should be everybody's concern, is education and the need to improve our schools. That's a huge, the impression and the reality. I know it's a huge conversation, but that's a concern. Let's just say that and not dig into that too deeply. So we've got, Workforce Development Committee that's working hard with ECC and U46 to develop things that will help people be trained and get good jobs. Other things have been mentioned, but we're going to get an app. That's a development that I would like to say I've been pushing a little bit, but we're going to get an app for businesses, a portal. It's going to be real effective to drive down, as Julie said, drive down the red tape, drive down the forms, the bureaucracy. People are going to be able to check in City Hall on their own personal account and use that to do business with the city and really reduce the overhead and the time.
Government should not pick winners and losers. What John just said to you about we've been providing these incentives by waiving fees and sharing tax revenues with them to select businesses. Why aren't we doing that to all businesses? Let's just waive those fees. If we don't have to spend the time saying, hey, will this business benefit from us waiving those fees? Then we're not wasting staff time and money, so we can afford to not have those fees. If we look into economic development and make our environment so open for people, let's use the portal, let's use the internet, Let's publish for people papers on here's how you start a business in Elgin. A new business, great. An established business somewhere else, move it here. We have less bureaucracy. We're making it easy for you. Reduce the taxes in it. How about we offer an incentive to groups like the Chamber and the DNA saying, all right, instead of paying you a set amount every year, for every business you bring in, you get 1% of the city's share of income tax for the first 5 years. 5%, 10%. Let's run the numbers and figure it out, and then be consistent. If it's a small business, if it's a large business, if it's $1,000 a year that the business is bringing into the city of Elgin, great. Let them take a percent of that. If it's $100 million a year the business brings in, well, that's a pretty good incentive to help bring that business in. Let's let the businesses cooperate with us. Let's encourage things like the tower building. We should not be spending that money. Let's help them choose that money themselves.
You want to wait? Uh-oh. Oh, sorry. Is this a minute 30? Okay, it's a minute 30. Go. Whatever you agree on as far as the current arrangement with the, whether you like it or you don't like it, with the arrangements with the economic development group the city has, the purchase of services agreement, the best thing that we can do in a situation like that is simply hold that contract to task and hold them to accountability as far as, this will be extra second. As far as, are we hitting those targeted goals in that purchase of services agreement? And if not, we're kind of right in the middle of that contract with them. If not, then we do need to reevaluate and figure out if we need to go another route as far as who should be running economic development for the city of Elgin. As far as like specific projects or things that come to mind, as you said in the questionnaire, Chuck, the city does own several properties. It's my understanding that an inventory has finally been done, kind of a specific catalog or inventory recently, that will hopefully help us determine if we can sell some of these or some of these parcels or some of these buildings, perhaps that draw in an entrepreneur to invest and get something onto the tax rolls and help out that tax base even more so than obviously an empty building is going to be able to do.
Let's touch on economic development in a couple of areas. First, just kind of a high-level overview, my perception on the chamber, some improvements, and just kind of I'll give you my kind of where we're at from a temperature gauge, I guess you would say. Kind of, first of all, economic development is really a team sport. If we look at the players that we have in place right now, we have the chamber and the DNA, we have non-for-profits, we have education, our natural resources, and other governmental agencies around us that impact, who wins and who we're competing against. Talking specifically about the chamber, though, I think that they've brought a strong presence to our economic development here in Elgin. And this is an issue where I came kind of full circle on. When I first was elected, I was very much against the chamber. But when I sat down and understood the value that they bring, the relationships that they have, the talent that they have in their staff, you too would understand why I am now a believer in the chamber and what they do. I also serve in the business retention committee. And I see how they help businesses be retained and also expand their existing businesses. One of the things I would like to see is a greater partnership between the DNA and the chamber so that we can have a tighter, focusing more sometimes on the large businesses, whereas the DNA focuses more on the small businesses and combine those. Some improvements, completely removing the business license, work on the 90-day fast track, something that Julie had mentioned. I hear that a lot of times in the business retention. Some of the things that I see, we got to look at where we're at right now. It's actually pretty positive. How many communities have new dealerships going into their community? How many? I'll respect the time.
I think the key here is return on investment. What has the return on investment been? One in respects of the Chamber of Commerce. I own a business. Chamber's never knocked on my door. I've never gotten an incentive, nor my family in 30 years. Never asked for one. Never had help ever. It seems that there's been a discrepancy of the amounts of businesses that are here that came independently and that those that were recruited. So I think that's a key thing too. I think that we definitely need to outsource our economic development at this point to a specialized agency, just kind of like what West Dundee just did. Let's get some businesses moving here. That's why our property taxes are high. That's why we have a lot of the issues that we have, is because we need more businesses in the city. I don't think Elgin has a very good excuse right now for having the lack of businesses that we do, because our history goes back real far. We're a very old city here. In Schaumburg, they have more business than we do, and a lot of the surrounding communities. So why is Elgin lagging? I think another problem stems from the code department with our local businesses, more so small businesses than large. I know code department has told businesses they're not even wanted in this city. You should go. I know that firsthand.